Hi there, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jackie and this is part 2 in a 4-part video series I'm doing to create a sea glass mosaic on this fairly large antique window. So in part 1 I showed you how to create a silhouette. So I created this silhouette of a child who's blowing the petals off a flower, and if you want to see that video you can click on the link up above and you can go to that video. And in this video I'm going to show you how to create flowers and trees, and I'll give you some good tips on how to do that. So, how to create flowers and trees. The first thing to think about is whether or not you want to follow a pattern. If you follow me on YouTube, you probably notice that quite often when I'm creating mosaics, I'll have a sketch drawn and I'll tape it to the back of my glass, and I'll use that as a guide when I'm trying to figure out where to place my pieces of sea glass. So when it comes to flowers and trees, sometimes I use a pattern and sometimes I don't. So in this video I've decided not to use a pattern, but if you'd rather use a pattern and you feel like it would give you a bit more guidance, then go for it. So the other thing I've done here, I don't just sit down and start creating flowers and trees. I do spend a fair amount of time looking through my sea glass collection and sorting out what I want to use. So what I do is I go through and I pick out a whole bunch of triangles, because I like to use triangles for flowers and trees. So I have a tray of white triangles and a tray of green triangles. And then I'll sit down with my board and play with my triangles. So I'm going to I did spend a lot of time arranging triangles and trying to figure out what I want for flowers and what I want for trees. So I have a bunch of flowers here and I have a bunch of trees kind of arranged, even though I'm still going to fuss with them quite a bit before I glue them onto my piece. So the first thing I did was I wanted to create a great big flower. So I looked for a lot of skinny, long pieces of white sea glass with a blue center. And I'm going to put that right here. So this is going to be the main flower that the child is blowing the leaves off, or the petals off rather. And I'm probably going to fuss with this quite a bit before I glue them in place. I do tend to do that with flowers. I fuss around with them quite a bit, and I like to put them in a way so that they all kind of flow together nice. And the other thing that's happening here is that there's a bunch of these petals that are being blown off the flower. So I wanted to have these out here as well. And I'm not sure how many of these I'm going to use, but where I have the middle of the flower blue, I'm also going to have a tiny blue piece at the end of each petal. So what it actually looks like is that this is a whole bunch of the bottoms of petals in the very center of the flower, and then these little shoots are being blown off into the sky. And I'll probably put the smaller ones out further. Oh, I need another blue piece. The other thing that I like to do with my flowers is arrange them in groups of 3. So I've got one of these. I want 2 more that are a different size. I like to have flowers in groups of 3, and I tend to go large, medium, small. That's just a design thing that I like to do. So I'm probably going to put these down here. And sometimes I even have them running into one another. And so I've got the same center or similar center. So here I've got blue centers and these 3. So I want to put those 3 together. I might move these around, but I want to get them all onto my glass to start with. And picking out centers is really important. So here I have 3 purple shells that I want to use for centers, and I'm going to make three great big flowers. Now here's where it can get even more interesting. I'm not doing the whole flower all the way around here. This is in the foreground, so I want really large flowers in the foreground. And I even decided as I was playing with this on my board that I wanted these flowers to be on top of one another. So you've got the larger one, the medium one, and then the smaller one off to the side. And these are my white flowers. Now the other thing I have here is I picked out other things that I think I want to use. Like I want to use some of these. I have this purple amethyst that's kind of like gravel. So I'm going to use that to add a little bit of whimsical sparkle in there. I have some little shells like this that I'm going to figure out where to use. I picked out some tiny moon snails, 3 different sizes that I thought would make nice centers for flowers, because as I get going here I'm going to make more and more flowers. And I picked out 3 round rocks. I really love using round rocks for centers for flowers because you don't typically find rocks that are terribly round. They tend to be fairly misshapen. So I picked out 3 kind of gray-brown ones, 3 white, and 3 black. And then I've also picked out a bunch of triangles that are green, that are going to make good flowers. And I've picked out some triangles here that are aqua. So I'm going to make aqua flowers, green flowers, white flowers. And once I get going, I'm probably going to incorporate a few brown flowers as well. There's not going to be a ton more brown in this because I want the emphasis to be on my silhouette. But I will be adding some more brown. And with my trees, what I've done here, I want to have a little grove of trees off in the distance above the head here. So I spent quite a bit of time playing around with some of my green. I really like making wonky trees. So I was looking for pieces of sea glass that kind of make these wonky trees. And I'll often, when I'm making trees, use a brown stem. But here I'm going to use green stem, I think. But I'm not going to glue this on until I've really decided that's what I want to use. I have to put it all onto my glass, play around with it a lot. This is a piece where I'm going to do a lot of fussing and playing before I start gluing, because I want this to be very cheerful and whimsical and, you know, just a lot of fun, because this is a child out having fun. But I know I want 3 main trees, and then I might have a few other green bushes down below. I want them to stand out as trees, but not be a focal point, because the focal point is the child. And the flowers and the trees are just to add cheeriness and whimsy. So I'm just putting all this stuff in place just to see how it's going to fit. And then I'll have it lots of other green and white pieces sitting aside so that I can reach for them when I want them, to get them to fit into my flowers and trees. So that's my start. Now I'm just going to play and start gluing them in place until I have a nice cheery flower garden. Now I have to keep in mind what my plan is, and this is where you might find it much better to have a sketch. I'm really going free flow on this one, but I am planning to have a path coming along here, and I'm going to have some buildings and a couple of anukshuks up in this area off in the distance. So I don't want to overcrowd with flowers because I really want to leave room for the rest of my design. So altogether, this creates quite an array of flowers. White, brown, and green. It all just adds a lot of interest and whimsy to what's going on in this piece. I'm hoping anyway, that's the effect I'm going for. And you can see that the white flowers really do stand out as flowers, whereas the green flowers are kind of hidden in the grass, and the brown flowers are kind of hidden along the path. And I will add some more green to the grass and brown to the path after I add in my buildings and my next step. So be sure to join me for my next video when I'll show you how to create buildings with your sea glass. I really hope you found this helpful, and until next time, happy sea glass hunting!